This is Flameland, my short, cute, colorful 2D platformer, and actually, this isn't quite what it looks like anymore. This is what it looks like. And okay, it's a minor change, but I think it's a really good one, and most of what I've been doing this year has been polished like this. Jake has been finishing the music, and I've been trying to make the game look and play better. So this graphics change. When I started Flameland, I wasn't very good at pixel art, and I was using this kind of background ground platform pattern that I was carrying over from older iterations of Flameland, and I thought the pattern was unique, but later in the process I made something like this. See, these wood platforms, it's clear you can jump on them because they are outlined, and then they accentuate that outline with this little highlight. This is a very basic idea, but one that I had not caught on to for a while. So I was thinking at this point, wait, should I remake my platforms to have these qualities, the outline and the highlight? And I came up with this. And the ground itself had a pattern that I thought was kind of busy, so I decided it would look less busy like this. Same pattern, but no dark lines. This way I can save the eye-catching dark lines for the outlines and let the non-interactive parts of the level fade into the background. You'd think this would be a quick change, but ClickTeam Fusion 2.5 doesn't really have tile maps, so I am unaware of a way to do this quickly. It doesn't mean there isn't one, but what I had to do was go into each frame and find each backdrop and change the pattern it was using individually. But that did give me an opportunity to fix something else that has been bothering me for a really long time now. See, the end of every level is meant to look like the Select Next Level screen, but it's truncated, so to get to the Select Next Level screen I would always fade to black and then fade in on the Select Next Level screen, and that's fine, but it kind of breaks the illusion of a continuous space, and that's what I want the illusion of continuous space. Like how in Mario Bros, the end of every level is the beginning of the next one. So I used this opportunity to elongate all these spaces at the end of levels, and then I added this extra frame that just reorients you vertically so that there doesn't need to be any fade to black. And I also added this transition for when you're going back to the world map. Meanwhile, Jake has been telling me for a while that Flameland would look a lot better if there was just like a little parallax in the background. See, parallax is the effect where things further from the camera move at a slower pace. Like here, you'll see the mountains seem to be moving at a slower pace than the trees because they're further away. And I've been telling Jake, no, we can't add parallax because this game is kind of meant to look like an NES game. That's why all the sprites have 3 colors, and that's why the backgrounds are limited to 12 color palettes and blah and blah. And the NES, really a lot of games there didn't have parallax. Very few did. But admittedly, this whole time I've been breaking rules by having these semi-transparencies on the dragons that follow you and using colors that weren't on the NES. And now that I was redoing the backgrounds, I was breaking a lot of rules, including the 12 color palette rule. And breaking the rules was making my game look better, so what's another rule broken? Let's add parallax. You'll notice that my parallax backgrounds tend to be shades of the background color. The main reason for this decision is to try to ensure that they do not distract, and to try to ensure that the interactable foreground pops out and reads easily. However, I also like the simplicity it seems to lend the graphics. Older games did a lot with very few colors, and although these colors are closer together than the colors in older games would typically be, I don't know, it's got retro vibes, I think. Like, the background is maintaining a minimalist palette. Or maybe it's just generally vibey. I ended up liking it this way better than when I tried to add color. Making these backgrounds was tricky because I'm still not very good at drawing big things in pixel art. Even my bosses are only 32 by 32 pixels. It's a lot easier for me to draw small things so I can refine them. So I was never going to be drawing these big gorgeous vistas that you see in things like Kirby's Nightmare and Dreamland. It was always going to be backgrounds made up of smaller stuff, like in Kirby's Adventure. But making a background up of a bunch of small stuff, I really risked being too maximalist and having too much stuff in there. So, like, look, this is a frame where I just had too much stuff and had to cut it back. But I'm especially appreciative of how the parallax makes the start screen village and this village in Atlantis look a lot bigger. But the real headache of the parallax was adding these differently scrolling backgrounds into the transition frames. See, the scroll from the select level screen over to the actual level is faked in this other frame. So here's a simple math problem. Where does this mountain appear in this transition frame? Well, it's got an X coordinate and a Y coordinate, and we've got to figure those out. For the X coordinate, just look at how far it is from the right of the screen, then figure out what the furthest X position is on its layer in the transition frame. And make sure it's the same distance back from that X coordinate on its layer as it is from the X coordinate in the next frame. for its y-coordinate, you gotta figure out what y-coordinate it appears to have in the next frame based on the parallax effect. Then you gotta make sure it's the same distance above the top of the transition frame as it is above the screen at the start of the next frame. Sometimes that worked, other times there were complications, like the transition screen doesn't scroll all the way to the top, so now I have more parallax to consider on that end, and honestly I just had to brute force it sometimes. So, you know, that was a weekend of my life. So that's the main thing that's been going on with Flameland. I realize it doesn't feel like a major update the way other devlogs have, but I wanted to release this devlog just to say we're still working on it, and we're gonna announce a release date once all the music is done. In the meantime, Jake has finished the Underlands music, which is what you're hearing in the background of this video, which means there's 2 more tracks to go, the final boss music and the final level music. And until we officially release it on Steam, it is still available for free at itch.io. So please check it out on itch and leave us some feedback. Speaking of Steam, I've been updating the cover art here, and I think it looks really good. And in terms of future devlogs, I'm hoping maybe we'll have a devlog on the music and maybe another devlog before we release, but then post-release we'll also have a devlog. But just not to get anyone's hopes up, I did want to say our wishlists are only about 130. So it's not like we're gonna make any money off this game or sell any copies, but maybe if we're lucky we'll have a review or 2 to read. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you give Flameland a try. Links in the description.